right. Well, good morning. Welcome to our morning devotions. And boy, it's cold here in the mountains. I don't know what it's like, but I think what is it, like 17 out or something. But it's nice to be inside. Got the fireplace going again. But we're at one of the most famous chapters in all of Scripture, and this is goes under the heading of David and Goliath. The David and Goliath historic event. It's 58 verses, so I cut it in half for our devotions at 29, which is a really good place to break it. So we're going to look at the first half of 1 Samuel chapter 17 today, and then tomorrow we'll look at the second half of 1 Samuel 17. But I entitled this The Philistine Problem. The Philistines are always a problem for Israel. They are their most formidable foe. And here's another example of it. And David is just finding his footing around the palace. And it's interesting that he is anointed king, but the way his dad speaks with him and he obeys his dad, I think that's one of the most interesting things in this whole section. That he knows, the whole family knows, all of Bethlehem knows that he's the anointed king, but David goes home and his dad gives him instructions and he just follows them. Some sons, you might think, after they were anointed by Samuel in such a public way that they're going to be the king of Israel, might, use that. But you see, this principle about honoring your father and your mother applies to kings too. Isn't that interesting? The command to honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long upon the earth, it applies to kings, because we see it here in the example of David. He's anointed king. Now, he hasn't been installed yet, but he's going to be the king of Israel, but he's still just going about his duties as a young man would. And so let's look at this. I mean, of all the things that you note here, I think that is something that he has a humble heart. David does at this stage in his game, in his life, and he's just a good guy. And the more I read this, the more I think I get a better sense of who David is, and the way his brothers respond to him, and all of that. We're going to look at that this morning. Okay, so let's look at verse 1 of 17. It says, "Now the Philistines gathered together their armies to battle, and were gathered together at Succoth, which belongeth to Judah, and pitched between Succoth and Azekah in Ephesdammim, and Saul and the men of Israel gathered together and pitched in the valley of Elah, and set the battle in array against the Philistines." But the Philistines have already made an incursion into Israeli land. They're already pressing, and so the Philistine army is not to be be looked down upon. They are the most powerful army. I mean, they could take apart the Midianites and the Ammonites and all these other ites. The Philistines could manage all of them, and so this is like their arch enemy is the Philistines. So it comes out here in verse 3, "And the Philistines stood on a mountain on one side, and the Israel stood on a mountain on the other side, and there was a valley between them." And this is just the way it is. That's the countryside. It's the topography of that part of the world. You're on the mountains, and it's hard to attack when you have the high ground. And so the battle essentially is going to ensue in the valley. All right. And it says, "And there went out a champion out of the camp of the Philistines named Goliath. He's Goliath of Gath. He is a giant," which every commentator says at this time in Israel's history, and this idea of a 9 foot 9 inch or 10 foot giant is not a odd thing. There were the Anakims. We looked at the Anakims when Caleb and Joshua were coming into the land. They said there were giants in the land when the first 12 spies went through, and that was one of the reasons that they gave a wicked report on why they couldn't take the land. There were huge men during this time, and the Philistines had these huge men. And we learn more about Goliath. That Goliath's got brothers, all right, and they're all giants. And so when you see a giant, this Goliath is not just a giant. Okay, let's just say that. Let's give him let's just round it off that he's 10 foot tall, and then he is armed. He has an armor bearer in front of him, and he's armed, and he is a warrior. He is a warrior's warrior on the side of the Philistines. He's like a war machine. I mean, he is of that day. He is essentially undefeatable, and that's the nature of the Philistines. I mean, they just could do it. And so it says this about this Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits in a span. So minimally, he's 9'9". All right, minimally. So let's say we'll add another 3 inches. He's 10 foot tall. He is a massive man. All right, 10 foot tall. He has a helmet of brass upon his head. He's armed with a coat of mail. I can't imagine being that tall, what he looked like coming onto the field. The guy was a juggernaut coming onto the field. That's why everybody's terrified of him. You need God's help to defeat Goliath. That's the lesson here. That's why I'm saying the Philistine problem, because what we're up against as believers in this world is always the Philistine problem. The world that we're pushing against, the old nature that we're pushing against, Satan who we're pushing against, is the Goliath of our lives. If we do not yield to the Lord Jesus Christ and fill ourselves with the Word and live in the Spirit, the Goliath of this world is much bigger, more powerful, stronger than any of us if we try to do it on our own. That is the point of this. They're describing Goliath in such terms that there's no way anybody can defeat him on their own. And when you get up this morning, if you think that you're going to win the day on your own, then you just might just go out and have Goliath just kill you. All right? It's not possible, because the Goliaths of this world, we live in a sin-cursed world where everywhere we go, we touch the curse. Everywhere. If you have to put gas in your car, it's because you burned it up and you need more gas. You see, things grow empty. I mean, the milk in the refrigerator is going to finally get empty, and you're going to have to go get some more. We are living against the curse. We're pushing against the curse. We live in a sin-cursed world. And not only in the matters of entropy, that things are breaking down around us all the time, especially at 17 degrees out, you don't want to change a flat tire and this stuff, right? You all know what I'm talking about. You don't want to hit a patch of ice and end up in the ditch or worse. This is the world. We need God. We need the work of the Spirit. We need the Word every second. Every second. That's what this is. That's the principle here. And don't think you're going to get up this morning and do it on your own, because the Goliath of this world, by virtue of where we are in this entire sin-cursed sphere, is much bigger, stronger, and more powerful than us. The only way we can win the day is through the Word, knowledge of the Word, and Spirit, the Spirit of God leading, guiding, and directing us. So it says he's got a coat of mail. The weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of brass. And so, I mean, I didn't look that up. I should have looked it up. I'll try to find it. But I did look up the weight of the head of his spear. It was 7 or 8 pounds. You know, the point? Let me get to it here. It says, and he had greaves of brass upon his legs, the target of brass between his shoulders. That is, he's wearing a breastplate. He's wearing armor on his legs. The staff of his spear was like a weaver's beam. The spear's head weighed 600 shekels of iron. 600 shekels of iron, I looked it up. That's 7 to 8 pounds on the end of it. And he's gonna throw this. I mean, the commentators say that this spear is very interesting. It really isn't that long, but it's thick and heavy. I mean, and he can throw it. I mean, this guy is a war machine. This is an Abrams tank of the ancient day. And it says, and the staff of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and his spear's head weighed 600 shekels of iron. And one bearing a shield went before him. So there's a guy, all he's carrying is a shield, massive shield. And he stood and cried unto the armies of Israel and said unto them, why are ye come out to set your battle in array? Yeah, how come you're here? This is it. The world looks at us and said, yeah, why are you here? Why are you here? You don't belong here. Look at you. You're a Christian. You don't belong on this field. I mean, just go home. Go do something else. You don't belong here. You don't belong in this world. That's what the world tells us. He says, what are you doing here? Am not I a Philistine? And ye servants of Saul, and here we go. Now he's just a military man. Now he's mocking the king. He says, choose you a man for you and let him come down to me. That is, we're going to just fight 1-to-1. That's all this is going to come down to. And we know the story. We need somebody to fight for him, but nobody will come. Let's keep going here.
If he be able to fight with me and to kill me, then will we be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then shall ye be our servants and serve us. Now, we all know that's nonsense. Never trust the enemy. After they win, they don't give up, they run. Now, Israel chases them down. It's a great victory. But the Philistine Empire is not going to fold just on the word of this giant. That's not going to happen. There's too much money. There's too many cities. There's too big of an industry for just the Philistines to say, "Oh yeah, if we lose today, we're just gonna turn everything over to Israel." Never trust the enemy. The enemy lies, and he's lying right here because we know what happens to him. And the Philistines don't give up. They never give up. I mean, we're going to read about the Philistines forever. All right? So this is hyperbole, and it's just, you can think maybe you could be the hero and win the day. So this is just a big lie coming out of Goliath. And he said, and the Philistine said, I defy the armies of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together. And he's there knowing, as far as he knows, there's nobody there that can take him on. That's what he defies, the whole army, one guy. All right. He said, when Saul and all Israel heard these words of the Philistines, they were dismayed. That is, they were shook on the inside and greatly afraid. They were greatly afraid. The great Israeli army, the king, everybody's afraid because they don't think they can go down there, and they're afraid if they lose that the Philistines are just going to take them away because that was the deal. It's almost like Israel is actually thinking about keeping the deal, that if we're killed, we're just going to turn everything over to the Philistines. I mean, perhaps that happens sometimes in history. I mean, I don't know. But if Israel's thinking that they're going to if they lose, I mean, that would be nonsense. Anyway, besides, they're not the ones saying it. But I guess if you went down to fight Goliath, you'd be agreed to it. Whatever. Israel's in a tough strait. And remember, let's hear about the king. He's bigger than anybody. He's head and shoulders above everybody. And he should be the one prepared to go down and do battle with them. But he's not going. So if the king's not going, nobody's going. This is just a very, very sad scenario. That's all we have here. This is how this starts. That's why I call this the Philistine problem. The Philistines at this stage of the game have the upper hand. There's going to have to be some kind of divine intervention to win the day here, and that's why we have the David and Goliath event. So let's keep going. So we're down here to verse 11, and then verse 12, things change. Now we're going to introduce David into this entire scenario. It says, now David was the son of the Ephrathite of Bethlehem, Judah, whose name was Jesse, and he had 8 sons. And the man went among men for an old man in the days of Saul. And the 3 eldest sons of Jesse went and followed Saul at the battle. And the names of the 3 sons which went to battle were Eliab, the firstborn, next to him Abinadab, and the third Shammah. So the 3 oldest boys that we already heard of, they're in the army. So they're down there on the field. And David was the youngest, and the 3 eldest followed Saul. But David went and returned from Saul. Remember I said he's just going back. He goes back and forth between home. He says, and David went and returned from Saul to feed his father's sheep at Bethlehem. Here's the king, and he's being a shepherd. There's so much to learn from this. His spirit. We know he's a valiant man. We know he's a man of war. We know he's prudent. We know he's handsome, more than handsome. He's beautiful. We know that he's a man's man, right? He's killed a lion and a bear. So what is he doing now? He's back taking care of the sheep. He's just doing his job. All right? Isn't that interesting? With all these credentials, where is the credentialed guy? He's taking care of the sheep. I bet you David looks back on some of those. Those were some of the best days of his life. And all he was doing, he didn't have the weight of the nation on him, right? And going to battle all the time and dealing with Saul before that. Remember those days when all we were doing is taking care of sheep? Yeah, don't look down on those days. Enjoy them, all right? Because this life is never going to be the same after what happens here. All right, so he's taking care of the sheep. And it goes on here. And it says, and the Philistine drew near morning and evening and presented himself 40 days. 40 days is a big number in the Bible. 40 days is the day of completion. Reigned 40 days and 40 nights. Christ was tempted in the wilderness. He was there without food for 40 days. Moses is on Mount Sinai for 40 days. Christ showed himself alive by many infallible proofs after his resurrection for 40 days. I mean, there's a lot of 40 days, and 40 days just means that it's the time it needs to get it done. That's what that means. It's 40 days. So there's the number. And for 40 days, he's coming out on the field and he's mocking the king. He's mocking the children of Israel. He's mocking everything. And he's finally going to mock God himself. All right. Some commentators, and it's not here, but they talk about in this capacity, the Goliath is functioning sort of like a high priest. It's my God against your God, and our God's going to win. And that's why he comes down here and when he says, I defy the armies of the living God. He said, he keeps going here. So 40 days. Now it's talking about how are we going to get David to the battlefield. And Jesse said unto David the son, take now thy brethren an ephah of this parched corn, these 10 loaves, run to the camp of thy brethren, and carry those 10 cheeses unto the captain of their 1,000, and look how thy brethren fare, and take their pledge. So he wants to know how everything's going on the battle. He's taking them food. He's taking food to his commanders. He's being a good citizen, and he wants to know how the boys are doing, and just, bring me some news about what's happening. All right, this is what Jesse's saying to David, and this all makes perfect sense. He's going to send his youngest son with all of this food to his boys that are in the battle. And it says, now Saul and and all the men of Israel were in the valley of Elah fighting with the Philistines, and David rose up early in the morning, left the sheep with a keeper. Isn't that interesting? I got to go. He's going to have a substitute shepherd, a keeper. They must have had somebody, right? So when somebody has something else to do, you might want to be a keeper. Now, that's not the permanent shepherd, but, there's got to be people that fill in when you're gone. What a great opportunity for you in the church. Somebody, you might not want to do it all the time, but you might want to be the one that fills in if brother or sister so-and-so is away. They have a keeper. So when the shepherd is gone, he's going to leave the sheep with a keeper. So when the teacher is gone or the pastor's gone, there's somebody that can fill in for him. What a great principle here. Maybe that is what you should be doing in the church. If you don't want to take all the responsibility, just be a keeper. Okay, let's keep going. And it says, and took and went, and Jesse had commanded him, and he came to the trench. So it's like they're in a foxhole. They're in a trench, like in the First World War. And the host was going forth to battle and shouted for the battle. And Israel and the Philistines had put the battle in array, army against army. So, there's just the battle is ensuing. And David left his carriage in the hand of the keeper of the carriage, which just means probably the wagon that he's got when he's hauling all this stuff. And ran into the army and came and saluted his brethren. And as he talked with them, behold, there came up the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, out of the armies of the Philistines, and spake according to the same words, and David heard them. I defy the armies of the living God. He heard them, all right? And he said, and all the men of Israel, when they saw him, fled from him and were sore afraid. The guy is just terrifying everyone. This is the Philistine problem. It's a big problem. The world around us causes us to be afraid, but the only way we can get through it is not to fear. Fear not, for I am with thee. Be not dismayed, for I am thy God. All right? You're right. Fear not. And we're told all the way through the Bible not to fear, because greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world, which is the Holy Spirit. You see, in the power of the Spirit and Word, we don't need to be afraid. But if we're just taking this in the flesh, when you look at what's out there, okay, and what's pushing this way, it can engender fear if you're not really trusting the Lord in these things. So many great principles laid out here. So everybody's afraid because they're not really trusting the Lord at all in this, because the one that should be leading them does not have the blessing of God. That's Saul. And let's keep going here. David heard them, and all the men of Israel, when they saw him, fled from him and were sore afraid. And the men of Israel said, have ye seen this man that has come up? Have you seen this guy? He's huge. Surely to defy Israel is he come up. And it shall be that the man who killeth him, the king will enrich him with great riches, and will give him his daughter, and make his father's house free in Israel. Make his father's free in Israel means his property is no longer going to be taxed. Oh, man. So you're going to be honored. He's going to enrich him. He's going to be rich. He's going to be made part of the royal family by marrying into the family. He's going to get to marry his daughter, and his dad isn't going to have to pay taxes. There is incentive if you ask me. That is, you're going to be wealthy, you're going to get the girl, and your dad's not going to have to pay taxes. There you go. This is the deal that Saul has put out there for anybody that will go and take on Goliath. And still nobody will because you can't get the girl, and you can't take the money, and you can't get the tax-free status if you're dead. So nobody's moving. And it says, and David spake unto the men that stood by him, saying, what shall be done to this man that killeth the Philistines and taketh away the reproach from Israel? And who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? Coming out of David, everybody, they're not used to David, see. This is so natural for David. He says, we just need to take care of this. We just need to take care of this. This is, when the Bible says that the Spirit of God came upon him and did not depart from him, this is the spirit in which David is functioning. He's hearing this, and others that are not thinking like him are putting up a wall, like his brothers. The Spirit of God did not fall upon them and not depart from them all the days of his life. Their lives. No, they're looking at it from a military standpoint, and as is David, but his attitude, who he is on the inside, is different. He's hearing this guy defy the armies of the living God. He knows what he can do. He's just going to say, why is this happening? And then you get into a conflict in your own family, what's going to happen here, between the boys who are not Spirit-filled and the Spirit-filled David about who should get things done, you see. And then terrible accusations are made here. All right. Hard words are said between someone that just wants to serve the Lord and someone that, at this stage of the game, his brothers are just terrified. All right. His older brothers. All right. Deep down in their heart, I want to believe that they understand who they're talking to, but the narrative here seems to think that they just think he's still the shepherd. So let's keep going here. He says in verse 28, and Eliab his eldest brother heard when he spake unto the men. And Eliab's answer was kindled against David when he said, why camest thou down hither? You see, because David's spirit is making everybody else look bad, especially the oldest brother. His youngest brother looks like he's got more iron than the oldest brother, which this is what's happening. It's not always that way, but this is what's happening. He said, why camest thou down hither? And with whom hast thou left those few sheep in the wilderness? You see, he's going back to your status in life. You know what you're good for, David, is taking care of a few sheep. And who's taking care of them? Well, we know who's taking care of them. And David took care of that. It was the keeper looking after him. But Eliab realizes that the discussion is making everybody, his own brothers, look bad. This is when you hear somebody speak positively about advancing the cause of Christ, and you say, wow, that could cause, I mean, that's going to be tough. That's not the time to ridicule. That's the time to listen. That's the time to listen and see. I mean, and there's counsel and wisdom in multiple counselors. I got all of that. But it's clear cut what you should do. That you don't go after the one with the good idea. That's not the one you go after. This is like Ahab. He looks at Elijah and he says, art thou he that troubleth Israel? Like Elijah is the one that's troubling Israel, not Ahab and Jezebel and Baal worship. No, that couldn't be it, because I'm the king and she's the queen. So, prophet, how come you're causing all this trouble in Israel? Same thing happened with Christ. You got the Sanhedrin, you got the Pharisees and the Sadducees. They sit in the chief seats, they walk around like they're the big dog, and who puts them on the spot is the Lord at every turn. And so, what do they want to do? They want to kill the Lord so they can maintain their status. Here, Eliab is going to try to belittle his son, his brother, the youngest son, David, because he wants to maintain his status as I'm in the army and we're doing everything we can. This is the way people work. So, just something to note here. If you find somebody that's on the right side of things, just take a breath. All right, even if maybe it wasn't your idea, but maybe it's an idea you need to get behind. Yes. So he says, and then he says this. These are the hard words from his brother. I know thy pride. There's no pride in any of this. There's no pride in any of this. Killing the enemy is not a prideful thing. It's a risky thing. He's going to risk his life going out there. We know what happens, but this is a real battle. Okay, so yes, against a military machine, against a tank, a formidable foe. So there's no pride in this. He's gonna go out and do this. To think that this is a prideful thing would be about the most foolish thing you can imagine. All right, let's keep going here. He said, I know thy pride and thy naughtiness of thine heart. Isn't it great how people can see your heart and tell you what's going on inside you? You could write volumes on this, the way people judge you. I've been talking about this. Man looks on the outward appearance, God looks on the heart, but man does look on the outward appearance. And all James 2 is all about is how you misjudge people all the time. And here it's not only misjudging, but it's accusing of these terrible things. You're prideful. It says you have a naughty heart or a wicked heart. I mean, to do all of this, you're promoting self-aggrandizement. You're showing yourself to be more than you are, David. I mean, what are you doing here in the first place? I think David understood who his brothers were. But I think more than that, as he's listening to his brothers, I think he just looked at his brothers as a very prudent man. We learned that he's prudent. The Bible tells us he's prudent and very balanced. And I just think he looked at his brothers and said, you guys are off the rails. I think that's all he said. I don't know that he said that to them, but he acted that way. Like, yeah, you guys aren't going to be any good to me in this. You guys are cowering in a foxhole. We got to get something done here, and you guys aren't going to be any help to me, especially after what you just said. You're standing over here judging me like you can see my heart. Is that right, Eliab? Can you really do that? Yes, he talks that way. It's just very, very mean. And it's between brothers. That's the other thing. This is really tough. He says, for thou art come down that I might see the battle. All you are is a spectator. You're just a spectator. You're not involved in this. What are you doing here in the first place? You just came down to see what was happening. You're like an ambulance chaser, David. You're just standing on the street corner waiting for some accident to happen with your cell phone so you can video it and post it on YouTube. That's all you're doing. That's all you're doing, David. You have no real interest in what's going on here. You've just come down to survey the battle, just to watch. And then this is the last verse, and I'll close with this. Verse 29. And David said, here it is. Here's his response to all of that. And David said, what have I now done? Tell me, what have I done to deserve everything you just buried me with? And then he says these famous words. Is there not a cause? Is there not a cause for what I'm saying? Is there not a cause? Isn't there something that needs to be corrected? Is there not a cause that we need to address? And we got to get out of this foxhole and take care of it. Is there not a cause? And so I'll just leave everybody with that this morning. Is there not a cause for what we're going to do today living for the Lord? Is there not a cause to live a righteous life and take care of the responsibilities that God has given us and take care of our families? Is there not a cause to stomp out evil and to advance good? Is there not a cause? Yeah, it's upon us all the time. We live in a world that is full of cause. Yes, there's a cause. It's called a sin-cursed world. Yes, there's a cause. We have an illustration here. These are these great words of this young man. Is there not a cause? Now, after this, he's gonna talk to the others. Then he's gonna go down to Saul. And this is going to set the stage for the actual conflict with Goliath, which we're going to look at, Lord willing, tomorrow. All right. What a great passage. What a great passage of Scripture. So much to learn here in the early life of David. Actually, there's so much to learn in the entire life of David. It's all in the Scriptures, but this is very, very interesting. So the Lord bless you. And Lord willing, I'll see everybody tomorrow. All right. So enjoy the day. Try to stay warm. All right. We'll see you. Bye.